Hello and welcome. I'm James Ezimoha and you're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. India's education minister resigns following youth protests. Our correspondent is in New Delhi to bring us all the details. Guterres arrives in Syria in first official visit by UN chief in 17 years. And Iran claims fresh strikes targeting US bases and assets in Kuwait, Bahrain and Jordan. A Gen Z protest in India has announced it is calling off a month-long demonstration following the resignation of the country's education minister. The movement called itself the Cockroach Janta Party, and it started after the exam papers of a national medical exam leaked, impacting 2 million students. In the last week, as the protest grew, it became one of the biggest shows of dissent against Narendra Modi's administration. Neha Ponia sent us this report from the protest site in India's capital, New Delhi.
Celebrations are breaking out here at Jantar Mantar. It's a main protest site where for several days, tens of thousands of students have been camped out, demanding the resignation of Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan. Now, as news of his resignation broke, we're seeing impromptu celebrations, more and more people coming in here to be a part of this movement. This has become, experts say, one of the biggest political challenges for Mr. Narendra Modi's rule. He's been in power for 12 years, but this is the largest protest against his government in the heart of Delhi that we've seen, in many, many years. Youngsters here telling us it was an exam paper leak that impacted 2 million students that brought them here. But eventually this protest became about something else. It became about how the government was trying to stifle dissent, they say, following a police crackdown on protesters earlier in the week. Many have said they felt like the government wasn't listening to the voices of the youth because they wanted issues like an overhaul of the education system as well as a high unemployment rate addressed. Now, in Mr. Modi's 12 years of being in power, we've never seen a senior minister like this resign before, and experts say that is proof that the government was feeling pressure as protest, at the protest site, numbers continued to swell as more and more protests broke out across different cities in India. Now, the organizers of the movement, the Cockroach Janta Party, are saying that the movement's purpose has been achieved. They're asking protesters to go back. In a lot of ways, this is a culmination of a movement that actually started as a joke online after India's top judge referred to some unemployed youth as cockroaches. But it was Abhijit Dipke, the founder of the movement, that brought that movement out onto the streets, demanding justice for students impacted by exam paper leaks. And now, as it ends, it has snowballed into one of the biggest demonstrations we've seen in the heart of New Delhi in decades. Neha Punia, 4E News in New Delhi.
Now, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has arrived in Syria for the first visit by a UN chief since 2009. In Damascus, he met interim President Ahmed al-Shara and called on the international community to support the Syrian people as the country moves through its political transition. Guterres also visited the historic Umayyad Mosque and is expected to meet government officials and civil society representatives. The visit comes months after the fall of Bashar al-Assad's government, ending decades of his family's rule and opening a new chapter for Syria.
I have just arrived in Damascus for a visit of solidarity. My message is clear. The UN stands with Syria at this pivotal moment, and I appeal to the international community to spare no effort to support the people of Syria as well.
Now, Iran says it has launched fresh attacks on U.S. military bases across the Middle East, while Washington continues expanding its air campaign against Iranian targets. Even as both sides exchange threats and military action, President Donald Trump says talks with Tehran are still ongoing.
Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps says it has launched fresh retaliatory strikes against US military bases and assets in Kuwait, Bahrain and Jordan. The IRGC described the attacks as a response to what it called American crimes against Iran. According to the IRGC, its aerospace forces carried out what it called a crushing strike on Al-Azraq Air Base in Jordan, damaging several US fighter aircraft and hitting barracks housing American troops, causing casualties. The latest attacks came after US missiles struck targets across Iran on Friday. President Donald Trump warned Tehran and its Houthi allies in Yemen of what he called major military punishment. Despite the escalating conflict, Trump said the United States and Iran remain in talks, adding that he believes Tehran is becoming more serious.
And they want to make a deal. I just don't think they're ready yet, but they do want to make a deal. Sometimes they don't want to say they want to make a deal. They want to be the tough guys, but they do want to make a deal. There's two ways. I mean, it's you can just keep doing exactly what we're doing and take them apart piece by piece. We can do it in a more rapid fashion, which we might do, or we can negotiate with them, which we're also doing right now. I mean, as we speak, we're talking to them.
Meanwhile, speaking on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Foreign Ministers meeting, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Iran would not fear threats or give in to pressure.
There is currently no problem of mediation between us and the United States. There are mediators, messages are exchanged, and viewpoints reach one another. What is problematic is the approach of the United States, which remains a bullying and coercive approach. The Islamic Republic has shown that it will not submit to American bullying, and we in no way respond to the language of force, pressure, and threats.
The US military also said it fired on another merchant vessel, attempting to breach its blockade of Iran's ports as fighting spread across the region. In Yemen, Saudi Arabia struck the port city of Hodeidah after accusing Iranian-backed Houthi rebels of attacking Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea. The Houthis responded by vowing further escalation, ending years of relative calm.
Now, the war with Iran is increasingly becoming a struggle over control of the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most important energy links. Now, while Tehran holds the short-term advantage by threatening commercial shipping, its actions are accelerating long-term efforts to build alternative energy and transport routes around the choke point.
Nearly 6 months into the conflict, the focus has shifted towards control of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is not physically blocking the waterway. Instead, it is using drones and cruise missiles against civilian vessels, enough to disrupt commercial traffic and challenge the assumption that Hormuz would remain open even during conflict. The Strait carries around 20% of global energy trade, making any prolonged disruption a major threat to the world economy. In a CNN analysis, former White House Middle East coordinator Brett McGurk argues that Iran currently holds the short-term advantage, as stopping every missile and drone launch would be costly, time-consuming and extremely difficult. But Tehran's tactics may ultimately work against it. Across the Middle East, governments and energy companies are accelerating pipelines, ports and transport corridors designed to move oil, gas and goods around Hormuz, rather than through it. The United States is directly supporting those initiatives. Before the war, around 23 million barrels of energy products passed through the Strait each day. It served as the only export choke point for Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar and Bahrain, and the main transit route for Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. McGurk says existing and planned bypass routes could carry around 60% of the oil normally shipped through Hormuz by the end of 2028. Among the projects highlighted are Saudi Arabia's expansion of its east-west pipeline to the Red Sea, the UAE's plan to double the capacity of its Fujairah pipeline, and Iraq's efforts to restore routes through Syria, Turkey and Jordan, linking its oil fields to the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. He also points to the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline as a historical example of how major energy infrastructure can reshape geopolitics. Completed in 2006, it reduced dependence on Russian-controlled export routes and demonstrated that pipeline projects can alter strategic balances. Now, regional governments are planning for a future in which Hormuz may periodically close or remain commercially unreliable, creating multiple export routes intended to gradually reduce Iran's leverage.
Now, the International Criminal Court is entering a period of major uncertainty after a landmark vote to remove its chief prosecutor. The decision comes as the court faces growing pressure from Washington and continues to pursue some of the world's highest-profile war crimes cases.
The International Criminal Court has voted to remove its chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, from office over findings of serious misconduct. The ICC said 82 of its 125 member states backed the decision after diplomats recommended Khan's dismissal. According to the documents, Khan had an inappropriate sexual relationship with a junior ICC lawyer. Khan denies the allegations. Khan's lawyer said he will challenge the decision through all available legal channels. His dismissal immediately starts the process of choosing a new prosecutor, although a replacement is not expected before next year. The vote comes as the United States launches a renewed diplomatic campaign against the ICC. During a visit to the Philippines, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio described some people involved in the court as lunatics and crazies. He also said no American political or military official would ever stand trial before the ICC. The United States is not a member of the court. It has imposed sanctions on 11 ICC judges and prosecutors, including Khan, over the court's arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, as well as a previous investigation into US troops in Afghanistan. Karim Khan also led the legal action that resulted in an international arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin in March 2023 over the alleged unlawful deportation of Ukrainian children. The ICC said all active arrest warrants remain in force because only ICC judges have the authority to withdraw them.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukrainian forces have struck an oil refinery and other logistics sites deep inside Russia. Zelensky says the targets included an oil refinery in Tyumen, a logistics center in Yekaterinburg, and a fuel depot in Rostov-on-Don, and a defense industry plant in Kirov. Meanwhile, Ukrainian officials say 3 people were killed after a Russian drone struck a civilian facility in Sumy. Romania says it has shot down a second drone that entered its airspace in 2 days near the border with Ukraine. The Defense Ministry says an F-16 fighter jet intercepted the drone over an uninhabited area. A day earlier, Romania shot down another drone that prosecutors later identified as Russian. It was the first time the NATO member had brought down an aircraft after dozens of previous airspace incursions. Now, President Trump and President Zelensky are expected to meet in Washington next week, Tuesday, while the Kremlin says it remains open to new U.S. proposals, provided they are acceptable to Russia. Join us now is Lamis Jidid, political analyst. Join us from Lisbon. Good to have you, man.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Trump and Zelensky meet next week. What must come out of that meeting for it to be seen as more than another show of support?
You know, Zelensky now is in a process of having some kind of victory recently. He's hitting targets in Russia. He has the fully support of the European Union, and of course now this visit from to Washington will help him to go even more further for what he hoped for a few months ago. Now Mr. Trump, he's playing chess game, and Ukraine is a piece of it, and he's having some imminent adversary now with Iran. We are waiting for the 0 hour. We are all waiting for some kind of escalation, and this will go absolutely hand in hand with what's happening in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Kremlin says it is waiting for new U.S. proposals. Is this genuine interest or setting the terms before the talks even begin?
You know, I think Russian now they are ready for some kind of agreement. But I think with what's happening again in the whole region, we could expect as much as the Russians some kind of escalation with Russia, especially that the European Union are going fully against or for a war against Russia. So I think they might take the chance now, and the Russians are they are fully aware that this time might be really might escalate situation, might escalate the events, and we will see how it will go again with what's happening in the region.
Now, is Washington the only capital or the only country, the United States, capable of moving this war towards negotiations?
I think the United States was always the first, it was the front line of this, that initiate this war at the first place. I think it was always, it played to go to the backyard of the Russian and since the Red Revolution, we all know the American involvement in all the changes, the political changes that happened in Ukraine. And of course, America might be the first factor, if we could say, to get involved and to bring solutions when it comes to the Ukrainian war. This is what we hoped when Mr. Trump arrived, and mainly tried to pull out, but again, European Union now is quietly involved, the NATO is quietly involved, and I think everybody feels threatened at this stage, and especially the Europeans.
Yeah, let me get your thoughts on that, because that takes me to my next question. At what point do repeated incidents near NATO borders stop being isolated events and become a broader security challenge?
Absolutely. The European Union is the carnivore in a forest that just, they are the vegetarian among all the carnivore, I'm sorry. And the European Union woke up very late on these facts now. There is many issues regarding the security of this continent and the involvement of the United States in a protection, an umbrella of protection for as the NATO for the European Union. There is a new issues with the United States. It's the announcement of Mr. Trump that's going behind Greenland. It's the stop financing the NATO. It's many disagreement between that we could see it happening slowly between the United States and the NATO, and behind it the European Union. So yes, this continent is facing many threats. The big part of it is the war in Ukraine, of course, and another part could be coming from the alliance and the Western alliance with the United States, and this is to be discussed and stage for for this union, for its security structure, for its commercial, for its informatic security. It's in a process of a new identity, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Now, finally, Lamis, what role should European allies be playing while Washington tries to restart diplomacy?
I'm not sure America now, in the age of its diplomacy, I'm not sure I could really say it this way. I could say that the American, they believe that certain files are better to be dealt with than others. I think the European Union is not an issue for America. Its security, it's related to the security of the United States first and second. So I believe that the European Union has to face this bitter reality with the United States and has to go on its own finding its own security.
That was Lamis Judith, political analyst, joining us from Lisbon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Europe's energy map is changing as countries seek new ways to reduce dependence on a single supplier. Turkey is emerging as a key player in this shift, balancing old partnerships with new energy alliances that could reshape regional power dynamics.
For years, Russia has used its vast energy supplies as a source of influence over neighbouring countries. But Turkey, once heavily dependent on Russian gas, is now taking steps to reduce that vulnerability. According to Atlantic Council, Ankara is expanding its energy partnerships with Azerbaijan while rapidly increasing its ability to import liquefied natural gas, or LNG, from global markets, especially the United States. A major milestone came recently with a 15-year gas agreement between Turkey and Azerbaijan. The deal will secure billions of cubic meters of gas supplies through the 2040s and strengthen a partnership that has become central to Turkey's energy plans. Turkey's dependence on Russia has already started to decline. 2 decades ago, Russian gas made up nearly 2/3 of Turkey's imports. Today, that share has fallen to around 40%, while supplies from Azerbaijan have grown significantly. US LNG has also become an increasingly important part of this shift. New long-term agreements with companies including Cheniere Energy and ExxonMobil are expected to further strengthen America's role in Turkey's energy market in the coming years. However, Turkey is not completely moving away from Russia. Russian gas remains a major part of its energy system, and Ankara still relies on Moscow for stable and large-scale supplies. Instead, Turkey's strategy is about creating more options. By combining pipeline supplies from Azerbaijan with LNG from global markets, Ankara hopes to gain greater influence and position itself as a regional energy hub. The move could also strengthen Turkey's role between Europe's energy needs and the resource-rich countries of Eurasia.
Now, more than 200,000 people have been ordered to flee wildfires across France and Spain as extreme heat, strong winds, and merging fire fronts overwhelm emergency services. France has deployed the military and requested European Union support, while Spain has declared its first national wildfire emergency.
Wildfires are sweeping across southwest France and central Spain, forcing mass evacuations and stretching emergency crews to their limits. In France, authorities ordered the evacuation of the entire Cap Ferret Peninsula after a major blaze threatened homes, campsites and tourist areas along the Atlantic coast. Firefighting aircraft and helicopters were deployed as thick smoke rose above forested areas near Liège Cap Ferret. Almost 60,000 people were ordered to leave areas near Bordeaux, while the wider evacuation effort across the Gironde and Landes regions affected around 200,000 people. French President Emmanuel Macron mobilized the military and requested assistance from the European Union as the country's wildfire crisis intensified. Residents fled nearby communities as flames approached homes. Elderly residents were also evacuated from care homes in Saint-Aubin-de-Médoc, with paramedics called to move people from their beds during the night.
I waited for an hour and the police came to tell me to leave. I'm going to do the same now because it's chaos. People aren't paying attention. They're driving recklessly, and if we leave in a hurry, we're going to end up stuck in traffic for nothing.
Across the border in Spain, several large fires west of Madrid merged into a single blaze that officials said was beyond the capacity of firefighters to contain. Spain declared a national emergency, opening access to central government funding and additional resources. Around 25,000 people were ordered to evacuate, while almost 40,000 others were told to remain indoors. More than 2,000 emergency personnel and 10 aircraft were deployed as crews tried to stop fires near Madrid and Avila from joining. Homes were seen burning in the Sierra Oeste region, where Madrid's regional president described the crisis as the worst wildfire in the region's history.
Now to Africa. The Democratic Republic of Congo is stepping up its response to an Ebola outbreak that continues to put pressure on the country's healthcare system. Here's more.
The Democratic Republic of Congo is stepping up efforts to contain its worst Ebola outbreak in years, as health workers warn staff shortages and delayed salaries are hampering the response. Officials this week revised the outbreak toll to more than 2,860 confirmed cases and at least 1,200 deaths, while the World Health Organization says the true number of infections could be even higher, with many cases emerging outside known transmission chains. During a visit to the hard-hit town of Mongwalu on Friday, Prime Minister Judith Suminwa Tuluka was told that many frontline healthcare workers have gone unpaid for the past 2 months under the country's free healthcare program.
You mentioned the lack of equipment and so on. Laboratories are being set up, equipment is being delivered, and vehicles, including ambulances to transport patients, are gradually arriving. We are trying to move as quickly as possible. We are also looking at the situation of the healthcare workers involved in the Ebola response, as well as the broader health sector.
The visit comes after weeks of protests by healthcare workers, who say better funding and staffing are essential to bring the outbreak under control.
All right, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.